Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this Stephen King video, I will be doing a dedicated book review for, in my opinion, the best all-time Richard Bachman book, and quite possibly Stephen King's most underrated book of all time. Now, I know a lot of y'all would disagree with me, but I'm of course talking about Roadwork, the masterpiece that is Roadwork. Now, I know a lot of people hate this book or they severely dislike it, and often it's cited as one of Stephen King's worst books of all time, which quite often baffles me. I love this book. I know a few certain of my good pals here on BookTube, especially Fina Reads. She gives this book 5 stars. This is her all-time favorite Stephen King book, and a few other people, including one of my mods on my Discord, Pat Sava. He really loves this book. So for me, I'm going to jump into my review of like why I love this book so much, why I think it's underrated, but also an understanding of why people don't like this book. And I think if you've never read this book and you're a Stephen King completionist, you just have to jump into this book with the mindset of like what this book is. Because I know a lot of people don't like this book, and I'll get all into all of that in the review. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first off, Roadwork. This is one of the early Richard Bachman books, I think published in 1978, 1979, I think the late 70s. Nope, I'm wrong. 1981. So it's still one of the early Richard Bachman books. So keep that in mind. I will say, Richard Bachman books definitely have a different feel than Stephen King books. Even some ones that Stephen King fans themselves love, like The Long Walk, The Running Man, Thinner, they all definitely lean towards nihilism, and the endings kind of reflect that. Sometimes, Stephen King books, they can end in a certain way, but oftentimes they end in somewhat hopeful manners. With Richard Bachman books, oftentimes the endings are very nihilistic in nature, and just the stories themselves are a bit more depressing in tone. Keep that in mind as well, but also just realize that Roadwork, one of the main reasons why people don't love this book is that it's a far departure from what Stephen King normally writes. This is not a horror book. I wouldn't even really describe this as a thriller book. There's no supernatural elements. It's basically just a literary character study of this random dude named Barton Dawes. And if you have no idea like what this book is about, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think it's just very interesting to jump into it not knowing anything and just kind of discover the story for yourself. But if you must know, Barton Dawes is a very disgruntled man because there's this new highway system that's going to be built through his place of work. Not only that, but also his home. So he's struggling internally because of that. And because of that, he's getting mixed up into some weird things, making some questionable decisions, and you're following his character while he's slowly, falling into madness. And there's a lot of crazy stuff that he does, especially towards the end of this book, and just his thought patterns are very interesting to follow. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely check this book out, but definitely know that there's no supernatural elements. It's not a horror book. I wouldn't even really describe it as a thriller book. It's definitely literary, and it's more of a character study about this dude named Barton Dawes. So with all of that being said, that's what the story basically is, and I don't really want to touch on the different beats that this story goes through and what Barton Dawes says and does. You just kind of figure that out for yourself. But I will say one of the reasons why I think this book worked well for me is that I went into the book with very low expectations, because early on in my King reading career, I definitely looked on a lot of forums and a lot of websites looking at people's rankings of all of Stephen King's works. And more often than not, Roadwork was towards the very bottoms of most people's list. A lot of times it was at the very bottom. Like if there were like 70 of Stephen King's books, Roadwork was like number 70, or, in the high 60s somewhere. A lot of people don't love this book. So when I went into it, I read it for the first time and I'm like, you know what? I know I'm not going to love this book, but I'm trying to read all of his stuff. So I'm just going to get it done and I'm going to just see what happens. And then I instantly fell in love with the character. I fell in love with the story. I loved how Stephen King was writing the story. I loved all of the different plot points. Well, plot points. There's not actually a lot that happens in this book, but certain character moments, I will say. I just loved the directions this story went in. So I think that helped as well. Like having very low expectations. Definitely, don't go into this book expecting something that you're not going to get, and don't expect it to be like, don't try to compare it to anything. That's why I think this book gets a bad rap, because people are like, oh, well, I love books like It and Misery and The Shining, and this book isn't like any of those, so it's got to be bad, and it's not as good as those. But like, it's just very different. It's just a different experience. So, my advice would just to be give it a shot, especially if you're a constant reader that knows that they want to read everything by him eventually. Check it out. I know it's not going to be for everybody. A lot of people, like I mentioned, don't like this book. But like I mentioned, there are a few people, including myself and Feeney Reads and my mod, Pat Sava, a few other people that love this book. And I think if you're a big fan of like psychological books, like get really digging into the mind of a character, spending time in his psyche as someone kind of slowly descends into madness, like this is going to be your kind of book. And yeah, it's always been one of my favorites to go back and read. I will say though that it's an interesting thing for me, because I do love books when they're memorable, like, oh yeah, I remember every scene. But for this one, it's kind of fun not to remember everything, because it's kind of in a way like you're almost reading it for the first time. Like obviously there's stuff that I remember about this book, but then there's like certain moments, character moments that he has either by himself or with other characters, side characters, that I often forget about, and then I get to relive pseudo for the first time. And it's just, I love revisiting this book. And this might surprise people, but if I were to make sort of like a top 10 list for Stephen King protagonists or main characters, I'm fairly confident that Barton Dawes would make the top 10 list. That might surprise a lot of people, because obviously, like me personally, like Johnny Smith from The Dead Zone, Edgar Freemantle from Doohickey, Dolores Claiborne from Dolores Claiborne. Like those are definitely some of my all-time favorite protagonists and main characters. But Barton Dawes, man, he's right up there with the best of them, in my opinion. I love how the story starts. I love the direction that the story goes in, and I love the ending. And, Stephen King often gets flack for his endings, but I think probably for most people, the ending of this book is probably where like, oh yeah, finally it gets going. But for me, I love the journey to where the story ends. And the ending is also very good. So I don't know if I've said this in the video yet, but it's 5 stars, obviously. I think it sits like just outside my top 10. After a reread of it, because I just recently reread this for the Stephen King Book Club for November, it might go back in my top 10. Like something's got to get bumped out, which will bum me out, but it's just so damn good. It's one of my favorites. It's by far my favorite Richard Bachman book. There's obviously stuff like Blaze and Thinner. The Regulators, I think, is another underrated one. The Long Walk is great as well, but, you can't get better Richard Bachman-wise, for me, than Roadwork. Roadwork, definitely my favorite. And, yeah, it's always been my favorite Richard Bachman book since I've read it. And it will continue to be so, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't even know what else to say. Like, There's not much. I don't want to go too much into detail about what happens because, like I said, it's very thin plot wise. It's a lot of character development. It's a lot of character moments. There's not a lot of actual things that happen in this book. So if that bothers you, might not be for you. But if you love character studies, if you love psychological books, definitely check it out. I would love to hear your opinion about it in the comments. If you've read it, have I convinced you to read it? Just I love this book so much. All right, so that's my quick little review for my all-time favorite Richard Bachman book and just one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books in general, Roadwork. And like I just said, I should have saved that for the ending credits here. But have you read this book? Have I convinced you to pick it up? Have I dissuaded you? Do you agree with my assessment that this is the best Richard Bachman book? Where would you rank it among his other Richard Bachman books? Do you love this book like I do? Do you hate it like a lot of people do? Or do you think it's kind of mid? I think Ian did read this, and I'm sad to say, I don't know if he wants me to say this yet, but I think he gave it a mid rating. I think he thought it was mid, which makes me kind of sad. But, I've read a lot of Ian's favorite books and didn't like them, so totally fair. I love this book, and I know a few of my good pals do as well, so definitely if I lost my train of thought. But anyway, if you've read the book, comment it down below. If I've persuaded you to check it out, please comment down below. And also just come back after you've read the book and let me know what you think of it, whether you hated it or loved it. Comment down below. And like I mentioned, we picked this book for November for the Stephen King Book Club, run by myself and Ian from Ian the Reader. But in December, we're going to be checking out Dreamcatcher. Yet again, not one of Stephen King's most popular books. But I think this will be a lot of fun, especially for Ian. I think this is the first time he'll be checking this book out. It's a little dusty. Haven't picked it up in a while. But yeah, this book, definitely not one of my favorites, but I think it also simultaneously gets a bad rap. Again, like with Roadwork, a lot of people put this at the bottom of the barrel, like bottom tier. And it's a bad book, but it's not that bad. I love part 1 of this book. And that's another 3-part rant that I'm not going to go on yet. And I will be doing a dedicated book review this sometime in December, so look out for that sometime in December. But yeah, that's what we're reading for December, so check it out if you want to. But yeah, that was my review for Roadwork. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching any of my videos, because this is just a really fun hobby for me. And yeah, if you liked the video, to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Stay subscribed for more content. Try to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, especially Friday for Stephen King Fridays. Book us from our Discord down below, where we've always got tons of buddy reads and read-alongs, including the Stephen King Book Club. Like I mentioned, we'll be checking out Dreamcatcher in December. That'll be a hoot and a holler. And Patreon link down below if you want to go support me there for as low as $1 a month. And my Amazon wishlist if you'd like to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.